Hello, everybody. This is The Rog, a Minnesota drummer with Kelly Cook.
How's it going?
We have not officially started the show yet, so you're not seeing this part at all.
All right.
Yeah, we're getting some level checks
All
just
right.
to make sure. We're going to make sure this works.
We want to make sure everything's smooth.
Right. So you just hang here just for a minute. All right. We'll be right back. Hello, everybody. This is The Rog. We are officially live now. We got the world in. So, Kelly, how you doing?
Dude, I'm doing great. How are you?
Doing great. Say hi to everyone here.
Hello, everybody. How are you?
I'm Paul Rog Rodney, a Minnesota drummer, and
Kelly Cook, Twin Cities Drum Collective.
so we are here to have a discussion about. Let's just start off right away about the robbery that happened last week. That happened. What was the date that happened?
Oh, man. What was it? It was
Thursday.
Yeah, it was Thursday. It was Thursday last week, so I suppose it'd be like, what, the 29th or something like that?
Something like that. Or 27th? 27th.
27th? Yeah, I don't know. The day's all blurry
Right.
for me. It was last Thursday at about 5:30 in the afternoon. I unfortunately wasn't here at the shop, It was one of those, there was a rare convergence of circumstances where I had a couple of free hours at my house.
Wow.
Yeah, right. My kids don't live with me full time; they live with their mom. So I've got a 15-year-old and a 17-year-old. My 15-year-old has been just kind of struggling with her mom a little bit. They've just been fighting because she's 15 and whatever, all that stuff. And so she was at a friend's house, or going to a friend's house, and my girlfriend was going to be at work until 9 p.m. So there was like this magic 2.5 hour window where nobody was going to be around. And I like audio stuff, and I just picked up a new pair of speakers, and I just had been wanting to go home and have some Kelly time where I could listen to everything and turn them up loud and have a little bit of fun. And I made it home, sat down on the couch, started to get comfortable, and I got this Facebook messenger, like a call notification from Dave here at the store. And so I opened my phone, and I thought, because, me and David had spoke, I thought he was...
David Stanek.
Yeah, Dave Stanek.
Who was working here temporarily at the moment.
It's 2020, all his gigs have gone away. Teaching, there's just a lot of competition for that kinds of stuff. And so, he needed some extra money. I offered him a spot here at the shop. Why wouldn't you want to hang out with like one of the world's greatest educators, right?
Exactly.
So anyways, I had gotten this Facebook Messenger call notification from Dave, and I couldn't hear him. I thought he had called to kind of monkey with me a little bit, because he knew I had some time off, and he knew I was desperately wanting a little bit of time for myself. So I thought he was calling to just mess with me a little bit, and I couldn't hear him. So we tried again, and then eventually I tried calling his cell phone, and I couldn't get a hold of him on his cell phone. And so then I called the store. And when I called the store, Jeff Randall, who's the other associate that honestly just kind of happened to be here, he's like, dude, we just got robbed. You need to come down to the store. And I was like, what? He's like, yeah, no, seriously, a bunch of people came into the store and they robbed us. Can you please come down here? And I was like, holy cow. So I mean, I shut everything down and I popped in my car, and I came down here to the shop, and there was, I don't know, probably 4 squad cars here. The EMTs were here, and Dave was in the ambulance, and Jeff, we call Geo, was talking to some of the officers at the door, and just starting to tell them what had happened. And then as I hung out, well, I wouldn't want to stay hung out, but while I was here, I began to learn about the events that happened that evening. So yeah, it was a crazy experience.
So Dave was in the ambulance. So people got beat up. Your workers got beat up.
Yeah. So now I wasn't here. So like some of the details are a little fuzzy as to like how things happened in the shop. But the gist of it is that there was a group of 4 or 5 young men. From what Dave and Geo said, that they were probably between the ages of 16 and 20, so teenager type dudes.
Okay.
And they came in the store, and immediately they kind of split up all, and like one of them went to the back door and unlocked the back door, and one of them went inside the office to go look inside my office in the shop area, and then like one of them managed to had asked Dave, like, hey, can you show me where the bathroom, and then took Dave outside, and then Dave ended up coming back in, and they had basically, after a few minutes, and Dave and Geo kind of knew that something was up, right? Like they kind of knew that this wasn't your typical drum store type of encounter, but they really weren't sure, how to handle the situation. They were doing their best to try and, be good employees and fair to people, because it's never a good idea to judge anybody, right? Or make an assumption about anything.
Right.
And because you never know, right? And so one of the guys who perpetrated the crime was like, I want to buy a pair of sticks. And so Gio was standing behind the counter, and the guy came to the counter with a pair of sticks or something like that, and had pulled some money out of his wallet, acting like he was going to pay for it. And then when Gio rang it up to make the transaction, is when everything happened. And I'm not exactly sure the events about how it, between the time that they opened the register and what all happened from there. But the crux of it is they ended up stealing the money out of the top of the register. And then they had assaulted, and they were hitting Geo, and they were hitting Dave, and they stole Dave and Geo's phone. They stole Geo's wallet. And then somehow the guys ended up getting them out of they worked them out of the store. And when they made it out to the dock, there was somebody that was driving by, I guess, and Dave screamed help, and the guy was like, for real? And Dave was like, yeah, call the cops. And so the dude called the cops, and as soon as that happened, I think the guys split up, and they had some cars that didn't have plates on them. We're assuming that they were stolen, and then they split, and then after that is when I got the call from Geo, and everything kind of started to be brought to light as to what was happening. But from what we understand is it was a group of people that had been going up and down Central Avenue and doing similar things to what they did at the store. So ours was not the first in a series of burglaries / robberies, things that had happened over the past short period of time.
It's amazing how they spread out your team members, and they all covered their areas. It was pretty bold. I mean, first of all, it was early in the afternoon. Like I said, it was between 5 and 5:30, somewhere right around in there, so 5:15ish, which is weird. I mean, that's just right. To me, it seems like a really odd time to be, pulling a robbery. But I mean, you never know. It's not my field of expertise. And it just seems like they kind of knew what they were doing. I don't know if they had seen something on a TV show, or whatever. Maybe there's a YouTube video out there, how to rob a drum shop. I have no idea, but it was the thing that surprised me about
all of it was, number one, how bold they were, popping in at 2:30 or at 5:30 in the afternoon, and it seemed like it was relatively thought out.
Right.
Which tells me that they had either been looking at the place, trying to picking a good time, or this was just like something that they had done previous to this that they'd had success with and decided to do the same thing again. So yeah, it was for me, people have been coming to me and have been like, oh my God, I'm so sorry, yada, 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 and all that stuff. And I really appreciate the sympathy and all of that kinds of stuff. But I feel bad for Dave and Gio,
Here's a picture of Dave right here.
Yeah, that's after
ice pack.
Yeah, after he got done sitting it was after I'd arrived. He was sitting in the EMT, and they were just checking him out. Like, he took a couple good shots, and I think he bonked his head pretty good, and so they were just covering their bases, and I think Dave was too. And I just totally lost my train of thought.
Oh, sorry.
Where the heck was I?
Oh, we were just talking about how they were really well organized.
Oh yeah, they were. Oh, anyways, the sympathy part of it.
Sympathy, yeah.
But having somebody come in and do something like that, I would imagine would just be like really, really terrifying if you're not used to that sort of stuff, and if you're not used to like being scared and you don't do that. I mean, like, it's an adrenaline rush. There's a lot of fear going on there. So if people are going to be reaching out and saying, sorry, thank you guys, everybody, the store has recovered just fine. We were able to put our back wall back together, no problem. The guys got like $145 in cash, which is not the end of the world. None of the stock got ripped off. None of the stock got wrecked. So I feel very fortunate for that. So if you're going to reach out, make sure you reach out to Dave and Gio when they're here at the store. Please don't bother them on their own Facebook pages, and extend some sympathy to them, guys, because they were the ones who took, the brunt of the abuse, if you will. I, just had to recover $145 and then try and figure out, like, okay, well, what's the next step?
Right.
For me as a shop owner, it had never like you get concerned about people stealing stuff from you, right? Like, you try to pay attention in the shop when people are in the shop and make sure that nobody's ripping you off that way. And that kind of stuff happens occasionally, but we've been very fortunate. It's a very minuscule amount that people walk out of the store. It seems that people, at least with our shop, have had a fair amount of integrity when they're shopping here, and it's been great. But being robbed was nothing it wasn't even on my radar.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? It wasn't even anything I had considered, and so that part's a little bit weird because now, what do you do to prepare your employees for some sort of eventuality like that? So I'm looking at the shop and I'm thinking, okay, do I need to build like a giant plexiglass cage around our point of sales area? Do we need to enclose an area somehow so the guys can get back behind something and lock a door, or something like that, is there like insurance for this sort of stuff? It's a little, as a business owner, am I liable for any of the damages that Dave and Gio may have incurred? Let's just say they got really hurt, and they needed to go to the hospital or something. Who's responsible for that? Is it me? Is it them? Like, I never thought about any of that kinds of stuff. So yeah, it was a total eye opener, and I just, so now, like, in the aftermath of it, those are the things that we're thinking about as an organization. What can we do to make sure that when Dave and Gio are here, that they're safe, that they, if something were to happen again, what's their role in the whole thing? I would never, ever, 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 ever expect anybody to, fight to the death for Twin Cities Drum Collective.
Oh, right.
We're fully insured. Take it. I'll get it replaced. You know what I'm saying? Right. But nonetheless,
how do we handle those situations in the future? What do we do about that stuff? What can we do to mitigate, any sort of liability that we have here at the shop that might ultimately, be damaging or a death blow for the business.
Well, can I jump in here for a second?
Yeah.
So just as a suggestion to everyone who's watching right now, I've been watching this how crime has really taken over Minneapolis. It used to be a real safe city for a long time. Uptown was definitely a place for, I'm trying to get the arts group of people, and now I have friends who live there that are seriously scared. The carjackings and the hijackings are exploding in that area right now, and the police have answered this by stating that essentially just do what they ask, let them take it, don't deal with it. So far, there haven't been murders or deaths associated with carjacking, hijackings, but it's going to be a matter of time, and we're seeing more of this increased violence, theft, damage in Minnesota, which is really, really sad. And there's not a real true answer of why. I mean, people like to put a blame on a specific event that may have caused it, but that's not the case. We're seeing this happen around the country in different cities, and we're also seeing the murder rate explode. Minneapolis is up, well, as of July, we had already equaled the amount of murders from as of last year. Police calls are in the hundreds in just the 3rd precinct.
Yeah, well,
or shootings, I mean.
It's one of those things that, as a, I don't know, it's hard to comment on some of that stuff, right? Because there's so many different things that go into why all of that stuff happens.
Exactly.
I, at a very high level, personally believe that so much of that stuff is happening because I think that the world is becoming very lopsided. I think that as we see more and more concentration of wealth on one side of the scale, it becomes a lot more difficult to operate on the other side of the scale. And there's been a ton of studies that are out there that talk about how people respond to their environment poorly, especially if they're living in poverty, right? And so my personal opinion is that the more we see whether why the events happen, regardless of all that, but the more we see the kinds of inequalities that we've been seeing, the more that's put in our face, the more I think that the kinds of behaviors that we're seeing, just like you said, are only going to get worse. And I don't think that a lot of that stuff is going to be corrected until we as a society take a look at just kind of everything and sort of figure out a way to level the playing field a little bit, and I don't know what the answer for all of that stuff is, but I'm very much a humanist. I believe that everybody has value. Everybody that does work, their work has value. And that we should try and figure out a way as a collective group to raise the standard for everybody. And I think it's important that we recognize that, well, it might be easier for me because for a variety of reasons. Maybe it's because of my race. Maybe it's because of my economic standing that more opportunity is afforded to me. But I think that we just need to do and create those opportunities for people who don't have access to the same resources. And I firmly believe that when people are given the access and the opportunity to kind of increase their standing, I believe people react accordingly and do their best to increase their own to increase their lot in life or to better their lot in life or better their lot in life for their family. I think people are inherently good. You know what I'm saying?
Well, the thing is, there's more people that are good, and it's just the few people who are causing these issues, and that's the sad part.
They're
becoming more brazen.
And it's and again, who knows why? There's a ton of narratives out there as to why things are happening. I am not going to speculate in a public forum as to why it is that I think it is, because I'm sure I'll end up with an argument to somebody on
Facebook, and I don't need that in my life right now. You know what I'm saying? I just look at this from my point of view and go, man, it's unfortunate that these things are happening. I'm doing everything that I can as opportunities arrive, you know, to take advantage of situations, to maybe try and help people out or extend a little bit of grace or extend a little bit of latitude. And those are the things that I can do that are, you know, within my control and within my sphere of influence that I can put out there to help try and increase the general condition.
Well, along with that, there are some points that the police have released that I think everyone should know about. And I'm not trying to make this like a political thing, but it's just really important, because when you're talking like you're not exactly sure what your responsibilities are, your next steps. It's becoming a big enough issue right now that we're being made aware. So it says, do not walk alone. Be hyper aware of surroundings at all times. Pay attention. Carry only items you need. Carry less cash. That includes credit cards. You know, if you don't need anything, put it somewhere that might not be in your wallet. If somebody's going to come along and steal, let them take it, but you know, keep your items somewhere hidden that they can just take your item and it's not a loss. And of course, report any kind of activity that just seems
nefarious.
Carjacking, same thing. Lock your doors while driving. That's a key one. A friend of mine who lives in Uptown. She has a convertible, you know, and I'm like, get the convertible up, lock your doors, you know, stay safe, and hopefully, you know, in time this will blow over. But it's just sad to see our town being so ravaged by this crime, that I'll say, because I have some friends that are in the police force, and they're seeing calls that are 300-400%.
Sure.
You know, and they're shootings. They're not just crime. And then people are upset because there's a delay in police officers showing up to these things, but there's just not enough police officers to answer all these calls and all the shootings. You know?
Right.
And anyways, so I didn't want to go down that road. I'm not trying to, you know, create a scare.
Oh yeah.
I just want to make people aware, and I feel safe. You know, and again, this is a beautiful town. People here in Minnesota are wonderful people.
I think that those things are things that people should be aware of, regardless of the current social condition. Like, it's always just good to be aware of your surroundings. You know what I'm saying? It's just always a good idea to be paying attention, right? Just because I think that's the smart thing to do, regardless of when it's at. Because, you know, unfortunately, as much as we'd like to believe to, not everybody's a decent human being, and you know, sometimes people do bad things in weird situations. So,
well, I'm glad that Gio, Dave, and of course yourself, everyone's healthy. Nothing happened in the store. We got a couple of pictures here that I think are interesting, because I just like to see pictures.
Yeah.
We have an investigator doing.
That was probably the most interesting part to me.
Okay.
Is when the police showed up, is I kind of half expected them to be like, well, you got robbed. That sucks. You know, clean your store back up. We'll let you know if anything pops up, right? But man, when they showed up, and I don't know if it was because of the way that the robbery happened, if it was because it was a group of people, or maybe they take all of them that seriously. I have no idea.
But it's drums.
Yeah,
come on, man, protect the drums.
I get it. Yeah, well, all the resources here. We're going to protect the drums. No, I get it. But so after they had spent time going through everything with Dave and Gio, and got they were like, okay, well, what would these people have touched? So they fingerprinted the cash drawer, the drumsticks that the individuals had set up, some of the drum sets that they had set down. That picture that you were showing, the one prior to this, was from the shop area. That one's at the desk. But there was a drum shell in my shop area that one of the people had grabbed.
Oh.
They took fingerprints from all of that stuff, you know. I was kind of, there was like 4 people, and they're taking pictures and they're taking fingerprints, and everybody's taking really, really detailed records. That was the one part that totally surprised me. You know,
That's fantastic.
Yeah, I thought it was great. Sometimes, if I'm just being completely honest, sometimes my love for the police waxes and wanes.
Okay.
You know, but in this particular situation, I was, and I think in every situation, I don't think anybody doesn't really. I think that they're a necessary component of society. I think that you have to have law enforcement of some kind. But I was really impressed with the way that they came up and the respect that they showed my employees, the respect that they showed myself, and my business partner Lane. That part of the interaction what made me feel very good. Made me feel very good about the Minneapolis Police Department.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
So, well, hey, we've kind of talked about this for a while. I'd like to talk about more about you.
Well,
There's a lot I want to learn about you. Before we do that, you sent me a link to a video of a performance you did. I'd like to play that video for this episode so people can see you playing in action.
Sure.
Can you kind of set up this clip?
Yeah, so this is from a few years ago. I used to play with a guy by the name of Aaron Bierke. He's an electronic producer, calls himself Luminescence. We've been friends for a long, long time. He's a McNally Smith graduate. He is an unbelievable guitar player. Just fantastic.
Okay.
Great musician, pretty solid dude. And so for a lot of years, probably going back to 2008, maybe 2009, he and I have just played together. And the show that you're about to look at is an excerpt from a short tour that we did on the West Coast. This one happens to be from the Wormhole in Oakland.
Oh, okay.
And it was a great time. It was it was an interesting day getting out there, but it was a great show. We had a great turnout, and playing with Aaron is a lot of fun. It's very it's two guys, and so he writes and composes these songs. And then produces them and then remixes them live as we play, and then I play over the top of it, Yeah, and it's for the people that are like really into like EDM and glitch hop and stuff like that. When you're playing with, typically a lot of that stuff is just a lot of like DJs and producers, and they're up on stage and they're doing their producer thing, and it's all about the blippy lights and the loud bass and stuff like that. So when you can add a component of live performance, it's just one more level, I think, that sucks people in. And when when I was playing with Aaron, that's what I noticed, man. Like those shows where we were playing together, man, it was just happening. People started dancing and having a good time. It's just a really engaging experience. So you're going to see I don't know what you did for the editing, but that's what you'll see in this is probably excerpts from a couple different songs from that particular event.
It's a series of clips.
Yeah. It was really cool, man. That was a fun time.
Check it out. That was awesome, dude.
Thanks, man.
So with that tour, were all your shows kind of artsy like that? Like, mixture of art performance as well as what you guys were doing?
Yeah, pretty much.
Okay.
Pretty much. Yeah, there was a live painter for that one. The Wormhole, I've never been out there. It's in Oakland, California. But I think that's kind of like their jam. You know what I'm saying? It's sort of it was a cool club. It had like 3 or 4, maybe more spots where there was different activities going on. They had the main spot, which of course was where the show was. The music was happening. They had the painter off to the side. They had a mezzanine level that had a bunch of art stuff going on. They had like an outside kind of a patio area where you could still be engaged with the music. But I mean, like they had this dude out there who was cooking this bomb barbecue stuff and selling it, and it was really pretty neat, man.
I always love the mixture of music and art, like groups and festivals.
Oh yeah, I think it's great too. A shameless plug, but for those of you in the jam band scene, man, if you ever guys get a chance to go out and see Chuck Hughes or Tatiana Katara paint to live stuff, it's really a lot of fun. Those guys are local, and you'll see them around town here, floating around. But yeah, it's cool. I really enjoy that aspect of the stuff too.
Let's get into you now. Let's talk a little bit about what got you into drumming initially.
Well, I mean, that love started when I was a young man, right? So I was in about 7th grade, and I used to go to this youth group in Dresser, Wisconsin, I went to school in Osceola, Wisconsin. That's where I graduated from. And there was this church group thing that we went to, or that I used to go to on Wednesday nights. And for the area, it was kind of a big deal. It was cool. It was a lot of fun. But there was this guy there. His name was Scott Lee. And he was just a high school guy, you know what I'm saying? But he used to play the drums, and he could do like all kinds of fancy, he could do like a lot of triplets and like just kind of like a lot of like tricky rock and roll things that like for a 7th grader we're just like, whoa, this is the coolest thing ever, right? And so at that point in time, I fell in love with it, you know? And it kind of expanded from there. A few years later, I was going to a church, and somehow it was a growing church, and somehow I had convinced these people that I was the next Buddy Rich, and they had offered me a spot graciously offered me a spot on their worship team, and I had the opportunity to play with guys who were far and away way better musicians than I was, and I had hustled myself up a drum set. It was my first drum kit was a Tama Rockstar DX. It was a 9-piece, which seemed a little excessive for a worship gig, but really, in all reality, was not. Those of you who are playing worship gigs and are not using double bass kits right now, you're doing everybody a disservice. Metal that stuff up. You know what I'm saying?
Gospel metal.
Yeah, gospel. Oh yeah, dude. Yeah. So I started playing with those guys, and the bass player that I was playing was this guy named Joe Schmid, and he was a working musician. He like toured all over the country from like 1968 till about 1984. The keyboard player was a guy by the name of Rich Leone, who used to own Fuzzy Slippers studio here in town. He studied with whoever the heck the keyboard player was for the Yellow Jackets, not Bob Minster, Russ Ferrante.
Okay.
And studied with him, so he was that guy was just fantastic. And they just took me under their wing, and we'd play. It was kind of like an evangelical sort of we'd play these services, man, and they'd be long, you know, and you know, a large portion of them was relatively improvised. You know, you were kind of like following the ebb and flow of the emotion and all of that kinds of stuff. And man, during that period is just where I really began to connect with drumming and music. And you know, it was at that point where I had kind of like, okay, this is something that I really kind of want to go after. And it just continued to grow, and I'd learn more and more and more.
Well, did you ever play for the school? Did you get any formal training when you were younger?
No, not at all. I didn't get any of that until uh, probably until my early 30s.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah, I had I had taught myself how to read, right? I had at one point in time I had this little Yamaha music sequencer that you could program in beats and bars.
Okay.
So you could program like a quarter note and all this kinds of stuff. And so what I do is I take not episodes, but issues of Modern Drummer. And, towards the back, they always had like the education things, or they have a song transcribed or something like that. So I take those examples and I program them in my little sequencer, and then I go, oh, that's what a dotted eighth note does. And I go, oh, that's what a half note does, or that's what a triplet does. And then as I began to understand the notation and like what it really meant, then I could start to do my own thing. And then as I was just reading more stuff, I could then begin to like practice some of the stuff. I never really got beyond like more simple snare drum exercises and things like that. Never really got into anything too complex. But what it did do is it gave me a real solid understanding for being able to look at a score and go, okay, these are the changes, these are the feels. And if I really wanted to work through it, I could take my time and work through it. It wasn't until, like I said, my early 30s when I had to, there's a local bass player here in town, his name is Jimmy Rogers. Used to play in a band called God Johnson. One of my favorite, absolute favorite bands. I used to go see him every Wednesday at the Caboose. And he had come down with some sort of neurological disorder. That was like, it was like a nerve damage thing. It was really painful, I guess. And so we had did a benefit for him at the Caboose, and it was a Fish. Like, he loves the band Fish. So we decided that like everybody was going to play like 5 or 6 Fish songs. And so I had gotten an offer from Jason Flatiger, who was also in God Johnson. Yeah. A lot of people around town know who he is. Great guitar player. We were talking one time, and I'm like, man, is there anything I can do? And he asked me, he's like, well, can you play Yem? And I'm like, well, sure. And I didn't even know the song. I'd never even heard. I didn't know what the song was, but I'm like, yeah, dude, I can play it, whatever. And the song the actual name of the song is called "You Enjoy Myself." It's on Fish's Junta album, and it's like a 10.5 minute long song, and there are like 6 different sections that are complicated to play.
Okay.
And I started listening to that song, and I was lost. And at the time, I was working at the old Ellis Drum Shop. Dave Michael was a teacher there, and me and him were buddies. So I'm like, dude, I need you to transcribe this for me and then teach me this song. And so he got the song, transcribed it, and then we just started working through it. And then once I got through that, then I just started taking lessons with him. I started taking lessons with Michael Kiley, who's a teacher who unfortunately passed away. Rest in peace, Mike, miss you. And like now, like more recently, it hasn't happened super consistently, but taking a few lessons with Dave Stanek. And just because of the position that I am being here at the drum shop, I get the benefit of, spending time with guys like Dave King, or spending time with, local kick-ass players. Gordy Knudsen, Connor McCrae-Hammergren, who was watching this stuff, JT Bates. Yeah, there's the list goes on, and you get to sit down and talk shop with people and learn their tricks and things that they do that help them get through whatever thing that they're working on, or a particular technique that they may have. It's cool. And so that's the extent of my professional drum education, if you will.
What brought you to Minnesota?
It's real close to Wisconsin.
Because Minnesota's better than Wisconsin.
Well, no. So, I was 18 years old, man, and just like every 18-year-old, I think the relationship that I had with my dad at that time was a little contentious. And so, I graduated from high school, and me and him immediately went, we locked horns.
Okay.
And so I moved out of his place in Somerset, Wisconsin, and I moved in with my older sister at the time, who lived on the east side, like right around the corner from the pain reliever.
Okay.
So I moved into an immediately amazing neighborhood. And then I've just kind of made Minnesota my home, ever since then. This is where I just have a ton of friends here. I played a ton of music here. My shop is here. I live here. My kids live here. And I just kind of naturally migrated this way.
Well, but the leap from migration and interest in drums to drum crafting is kind of an interesting road for anybody. I custom build drums too, and I love hearing everybody's unique stories. Prior to working at Elsa's shop, did you work retail for instruments at all?
No. Again, when I was a young guy, I'll just kind of break down the whole story how it goes. So I've always been I've always had a high mechanical aptitude. Like I like working with my hands. My dad's that way, and my friends are that way, and I grew up kind of on a farm, so you're constantly doing that kinds of stuff. And as a seventh grader reading Modern Drummer, and you see how stuff is made, sometimes you get these fantastical ideas inside your head about how a drum is manufactured. Mm-hmm. And so, drums are made largely in plied construction, right? It's a bunch of little pieces laid up together, laminated together, and then it's put into a shell and yada, yada, yada. And so at that time, I thought to myself, well, man, why couldn't you just hollow out a tree? Why couldn't you just take a section of a tree, cut it down, and you got to make sure it's wide enough, right? I thought through all of this stuff in my head. If I'm going to have a 24-inch drum, got to have this much on both sides. They were cut so I can,
right,
get the shell and yada, yada, all that kinds of stuff. And so I had these ideas, and I had no idea how to execute them, right? So I went about starting to learn how to do that stuff, and which took me into shop class, so and you start to learn all of the different stuff, and then you as that skill set develops, you kind of venture out. You're like, okay, well, now I can go ahead and do these things. And you might experiment on a drum set. You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. And for anybody who's ever experimented on one, you screw up the first one, or you do something and it doesn't turn out right, and you learn all of that kinds of stuff. But eventually, that brought me to a place where I found myself actually studying furniture making, right? And so I had learned that as a trade.
Okay.
Then, kind of started out my professional career working for a place called Chandler Exhibits here. They're in Afton right now, but when I started working for them, they were in Hudson. Okay. And they did trade show stuff. So, they built big corporate exhibits for, Anderson Windows and Sony and Sleep Now. All these different places. And that's when I really kind of started to hone my fabrication craft. Okay. Up until that point, I had only ever really worked on a couple of drum sets, you know what I'm saying, mm-hmm. and had marginal success at that. And so what had happened is I worked for those guys and continued to build my skill for a little while, and I got to a point working for those guys where I felt I wasn't getting far enough on my career path. And so I quit working for them, and I went to work for a company called Sheehy Construction. They're a commercial contractor. And went through the journeyman or the apprenticeship program and became a journeyman carpenter.
Okay.
So around 2008 or so, Tim was opening his second location in Richfield.
So Tim Ellis.
Yeah, Tim Ellis, the one and only, right? I had approached him, going, "Hey, man, I'm out of work right now. I need sticks and heads and yada, 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 yada. I'm a good carpenter. Do you think there might be something that we could barter or trade for?" And he goes, "Oh, man, I'd love to put you into one of our drum sets." I'm like, "Really?" And he's like, "Yeah, I'm building this store." So that's where mine and his relationship really took off. I had met Tim eons before, when he used to work at Guitar Center and all that kinds of stuff. Mm-hmm. And so I went and I did the work for him at the store, and I did the build out for him at the store, and it went pretty good. And then it was like, I don't know, 2008, and he had a guy that was working for him that quit. And we were sitting around at his house one day, and he's like, man, do you know anybody that can build drums? And I'm like, dude, I can do it. I can do it. And I had never built a drum at all until that point. And I fabricated every other kind of thing that there was on the planet. I mean, I'd built all kinds of stuff, right? But I'd never built a drum. And he just was hesitant and didn't want to let me do it. And I begged and pleaded until finally he was like, fine. Or he got desperate enough and was like, fine, one of the two, I don't know. And so I had went down to his shop, and I wish that I still had the thing, because now I could just point out all of the mistakes that I made on it. But I made it was a 5.5 by 14 natural maple snare drum with wood hoops. And I made it, and it sold. And he's like, all right, Lucky, do it again. So I did it again, and it sold. And I did another one, and it sold. And I did another one, and it sold. And then it was, okay, I have a kit that needs to be finished up. Can you do that? Yeah, absolutely. Never done it before. And so I did that. And then working for Tim at that time, he was building, that shop was building probably 10 snare drums a month, probably 4 kits a month. And it stayed that way until I quit working for him in like 2013. Wow. So I built a ton of stuff. And during that time is when, if you work at a craft, like if you're going to be a furniture maker, right, you're going to build one thing, and then you're going to build something that's infinitely more complicated, or not infinitely, but definitely way more complicated. Right. And you're going to try and increase your skill level that way. Same thing with that kinds of stuff. It was, okay, I did this and it worked out and it looked really well. Now I want to do this other thing, right? And I wanted to experiment with that. So through all of those builds, I had the opportunity to really hone that skill set, right? And really develop it. And I did it for a long time, and then, the relationship between Tim and I just became strained, and I ended up quitting working for him and stuff like that, and had moved on, and didn't build anything from like 2013-ish until 2017, when him and Lane opened up the original shop in South St. Paul. Okay. And at that point in time, it's a whole other story, but life had changed for me pretty severely in a very short amount of time. Okay. When all that had happened, and I needed something to do to occupy my time. Tim had told me that he had partnered with Lane, and they were going to open the shop and all this stuff, and he's like, man, we need somebody to build. Are you interested? And I was like, oh, yes. And then that's when I kind of picked it up again. I had an executive level job, where I was project managing, doing construction, management, stuff like that. Mm-hmm. And so I'd go and get stressed out during the day there, and then I'd go and build drums at night, like just unwind. And it was kind of my space. And then, without getting into it, just the relationship between Lane and Tim became very strained, and the circumstances, blah, 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 all the stuff, right?
We don't need to know.
Yeah, we don't need to know about it.
We don't need to know that.
But then that happened, and then the relationship between Lane and Tim dissolved. Okay. And there was an opportunity for me at that point in time to kind of do my own thing, if you will. And I had some money, and I had the opportunity, and I was really looking. I had felt like, just with my experience and what I was doing, with all the millwork stuff and all the construction stuff, had led me to a point where I thought I knew what I was doing when it came to running a business. And so I was like, all right, boogie on, and then quit my day job and open the shop. Wow. And it's been, I don't want to say it's been a roller coaster, but it's been like, a mostly pleasant one.
Well, no, it's a fantastic story, and nothing's ever easy. I guess one thing I love about his story, as well as many other professionals that get into anything, is that they get asked the question, can you do this, can you do that? And they say yes, even if they can't, and then they figure it out. That's the mode of success.
There was and I don't know when he said it, but Richard Branson had said, I had just, in listening to whatever, the internet, he basically said, if there's an opportunity out there and you don't know how to do it, take it and figure out how to do it later.
Right.
You know, what's the worst thing that happens, right? You get in over your head and you can't do it. But the flip side of that is, let's say that you take the opportunity, you jump, and you're successful.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? So I don't know. I've always been a little bit of a risk taker, I suppose. And so I had the support from my girlfriend at the time, and it was just like, just go do it. And it's one of those things that you don't really realize it, but all of the stuff that you have gone through up until that point was preparing you for that next leap, you know. And here we are.
Joe, in your drum shop, man. This is fantastic. And you're in Lane's.
Yeah, mine and Lane's. I don't want to forget Lane, man. A lot of people. So when people are seeing the TCDC stuff here at the store, I manage the store,
right,
and am in control largely of the store. The day-to-day, the going on, I manage the finances, what we carry, what we don't carry, what we're building, what we're not building. If you come into the store and you want to make a deal, I'm making the deal with you. And Lane, who is, in my opinion, a much better communicator than I am, does all the social media stuff.
Okay.
And so when you're looking at Instagram, you're looking at Lane's musings. When you're looking at a drum set, you're looking at Kelly's musings.
Okay.
It's a really good partnership. I could not. Lane he's an interesting character for sure, but I don't think I could have landed a better partner for this at all. He's thoughtful. He's smart. I mean, he's smart, right? He's been up and down the road. He's got his own businesses. You know what I'm saying? He's a great communicator. He's been in a band that has toured all over the world.
Dillinger 4.
Yeah, Dillinger 4. Did arena tours with Green Day. Are you kidding me?
Wow, I didn't know that.
Yeah, the thing is if you met Lane, you're like, this guy? Really? This guy? You know? But, I really don't want to take anything away from him. They were able to.
He's a nice guy, but he's gonna, No.
I just wouldn't have. Lane's a punk drummer, right? And I don't want to take anything away from punk drummers.
Oh, no,
right?
of course not.
But punk drummers aren't playing fusion. That's not to say that they can't, but they aren't. And that music, in my opinion, sometimes is a little less refined, right?
Well, how many fusion players can play punk? All right.
So when you look at him and you go and you see the success that the band had, you're like, I don't know. It makes you realize that your playing is not necessarily the only ingredient. And I'd be willing to bet that it's Lane's, his general attitude towards life, and then some other serendipitous stuff that led to his, in Dillinger 4's success as a group.
Right.
And the same thing for him with the rest of his business ventures. He's a pretty successful guy.
That's fantastic.
Yeah, it is. I have a lot of respect for him. And I just don't want people, I guess I say all that because I don't want people to think that I don't appreciate Lane. I neglected to tell him kind of that we were doing this sort of thing. I don't want him to feel left out. But anyways, Lane, if you're watching, I appreciate you and I love you to death. And I'm glad you're my partner. And for those of you who come down here with Lane's, hopefully when he's here, show him some love because he's the other half of this venture.
Well, I've had the pleasure of meeting Lane. So, Lane, I will make sure to get you on the show. We got to cover your story too. Not only this, but your career and your drumming career. I think is fascinating. It's fantastic.
It really is. It really, really is. He's an interesting dude.
Well, so we're coming up on almost an hour already. This is what blows. I love doing this, but there's so much I want to learn. So I want to go over some of your drumming, your drum manufacturing.
Yep.
First of all, you had a really interesting story that you put out on Facebook about refurbishing a burnt drum kit.
Yeah, so we've got that here. So when we first opened the shop, there was a guy, Shannon Kosan, who's a local Minnesota drummer, who had this drum kit, and it had gone through a house fire. and I'm not super familiar with what happened to it. This is a Premier Signia kit. It was a 8, 10, 12, 14, 18-inch bass drum. And I love Signia stuff. I love Premier stuff, but I really like Signia stuff. When I was like 17, and I went to Guitar Center one time. Don't tell anybody, but I went there, and it was like a wine red Signia kit that was just like up on one of the risers, man. And I just saw that thing, and I fell in love with it, and that's why I have so much Premier stuff here in the shop, because I dig it. It's super cool. So I saw this, and Shannon was like, "Well, yeah, I got this Signia kit," and I was like, "Oh, really?" And he's like, "Yeah, well, it's been through a house fire, and it's not really that damaged. Yeah, it kind of smells like a house fire."
Right.
Like, okay, I'll buy the drums. So he brings me the drums, and I opened them, and I was like, huh, wow, because on this particular drum, it had gotten so hot. I don't know if you guys can see it, but there's like a spot right here where like it totally melted through the shell. You can see where everything got super like distorted. The tube lugs on these things were brass, and then they had rubber fittings everywhere, so everything was all like melted and just screwed up.
Yeah.
And I had, again, I could know how to restore a kit. I didn't do this. These lugs had whatever they spray inside a house besides water to put the flame. It was just covered in this stuff, wow. And it just etched into the metal, and it was just everything was just it smelled like a campfire. Everything was discolored, and so well, heck, man, I'll take this thing apart and I can refurb this stuff. Well, I took it all apart and I started working on the lugs, and none of that crap was coming off. None of it was buffing out. Nothing. And next thing you know, like I'm trying to work on the finish, and I can't get the finish to come back. I'm saying it, and it's just not working. And so I put the kit on the shelf for like 2 years. And I had taken it all apart, and the shells were nested inside each other, and all of the lugs and everything were in bags. I had even given the lugs to a buddy of mine who does like restorative type work, and been like, "Look, man, can you bring these back to where they came from?" He's, "Oh, sure, I'll try." And he brought them back to me and was like, "Yeah, I can't make this work." And I was like, "Oh." Anyways, so they were sitting in the shop, and I was getting frustrated with the clutter in the shop. And I'm like, "Okay, Kelly, now's the time in your life where you're going to get focused, and you're just going to do one thing at a time, right?" And so I looked at that Signia kit, and I'm like, "Okay, today's the day." And I pulled all the parts out, and I started working with the stuff again, and I just came to some conclusions that, like, really the best thing for me to do is to basically start from scratch and go over. So I took the rest of the drums, stripped them all down. They were originally chrome plated. They were originally chrome plated. So I took them and I had them stripped and then replated in nickel. And then we took the shells, block sanded down all the paint, got rid of all of the stuff. And then, because this is British, right, and the painter that I use is like amazing, we pulled the paint code for Jaguar's British Racing Green automotive color.
Oh wow!
And then sprayed up the shells in the automotive. We kept the badges on there. For those of you that come to the shop, or I don't know if you can see these, the paint on here is relatively faded. I didn't want to take these off because, believe it or not, these little grommets are like kind of a bitch to find, and even more so than that, reinstalling them sometimes could be a pain in the neck. So I wanted to leave those on there. So I basically kind of like took and polished this up to get rid of all of the funk that was on there, but leave as much paint as I could. And then that's what we have. I am absolutely ecstatic about the way that these things turned out.
It's a beautiful drum. I was here when you were assembling them. Yeah. And it looked brand new.
Yeah, well, I mean, essentially it kind of is, right? I mean, we repainted them with brand new paint. I cut new bearing edges all the way around.
You did new bearing edges too.
Oh yeah, that were consistent with what was originally on the drum.
So what is a premier bearing edge?
Oh, it's like it depends. It depends on the drums.
Okay.
On these ones, it's a 45 degree on the inside with like a 1/4 inch round over on the outside. And you just kind of have to take and look at the old ones.
Right.
You know, you can kind of take a look at the old ones to kind of see how far the curve goes in across the shell.
Mm-hmm.
You really can't ever match them perfectly, but you can get really, 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 really close. And so we had done all this work. I had sanded on them, and so I cut fresh edges on them, and then put everything back together. There's still a little bit of stuff that I have to do. The Signia stuff has these really cool mounts that grab onto these bars, but the actual L-arm bracket that attaches to this plate that spans here was toasted on all of them, and to find replacements was they were like, I found some on eBay, but they were like $100 a piece, and I had already dropped a fair amount of money on the paint, and I had already dropped a fair amount of money on redoing the hoops. Like, I probably could have bought a whole new kit for what I spent.
So this was a labor of love because you love Premier. It's not a profit margin.
No, this one's totally not. It was one of those things where we had a good month, and I was like, okay, I'm going to get rid of some clutter. I'm not telling Lane.
Surprise!
Yeah, right. I'm going to go spend some money, and then that's when I did it. So, being as those two plates are gone, the next thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to go get some of the Gauger rims mounts because I happen to really like his product. I think it's fantastic. Then I'm going to have those nickel plated, and then I'll put like our regular mounts on there. So I have a drum kit that I can play. But now that I've got most of it back together and we've got a good story out of it, we've got some we've got an example in the shop for what we can do restoration wise. I'm just going to kind of wait until I have another, it's going to cost me probably another $300, $350 to get the parts that I need and to get the plating done. So when that money becomes available, then I'll finish the project completely. But for right now, it's tuned up, it sounds great, and it just kind of sits there as an example in the shop for people to look at.
Well, looking at your shop, how much of your drum sets are new? How many are used? And then how many are the ones that you build?
Well, in the shop right now, I suppose we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17. There's probably 20 kits in here that are used. And then I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5 kits that are like house built here, that are here in the shop right now. And so I don't like necessarily build a whole lot of kits to keep on the floor. They're expensive to build. The other thing about doing custom work is it's very person-centric. It's what Paul likes, right? These things are beautiful, but they're like Kelly's vision of beautiful. And what my vision of beautiful is might not be the same thing as yours. So it's tough because, like, as a drum shop owner and a guy who can build this stuff, like, you just want to build all this crazy stuff and do things that are really cool. But the reality of the situation is that most of these things sit around for 3 to 6 months. I've got one that I haven't even sold yet that I built over a year ago. And they cost a fair amount of money to manufacture. The parts that we use are made locally. Our lugs are made right here in Fridley. Our shells are made right here in Northeast Minneapolis. The paint, a lot of the work is done right here in Minnesota. Okay. And I don't mind paying that premium. I think that there's a lot of value that goes into being able to reach out and touch your suppliers. Right. When it comes to the stuff that you're doing, there's advantages in all of that.
Well, it's a true boutique drum set made in Minnesota by Minnesotans. And that's the unique thing. A lot of boutique drum manufacturers purchase their stuff from the main suppliers around the world. They put it together, and it's not really of the town. So your drums are really of the town.
I would say 90% of it. There's some stuff that is just not available in the United States. Tension rods, hoops, things like that. They're just, it's at this point, it's cost prohibitive to buy and manufacture that stuff in the United States. It's one of the things that I want to. It's one of the things that I want to do. being a business nowadays, like I can't just make drums, right? You have to make drums and sell used drums and have events and develop other products. And you have to, like, modern day business just requires you to be more like an octopus than a single vision entity, at least my experience. I don't like, I'm generalizing. So you have to do all that stuff in order to keep your business affluent, and that's what we do. That's what we do here.
Okay, so I also notice your array of snare drums. You have some acrylic shells. You have different types of woods.
Yep.
Oak seems to be something that drummers are using more recently.
Yeah.
You have an oak snare. What's the advantage of an oak snare versus like a maple?
Well, the three things that create tone in a drum are mass, density, and volume, right? How much of it is there? How big is it, right? And then with the thing, how dense is it? Like you can have like a piece of steel that's 1 inch thick and it's very dense. You could have a pillow that's 1 inch thick and it's not very dense. You hit the piece of steel, it has a tone. You hit the pillow, it has a tone. That's an oversimplification of it all, right? But it's the same guiding principle that drives everything. You blow on a plastic bottle, like a 2-liter bottle, it's got a low tone. You blow on a 16-ounce glass Coke bottle, and it's got a different tone altogether. So the same principles that drive those two things are the same principles that drive the tone in a drum, right? So if all things are being created equal, and you've got a 6.5 by 14 maple shell, and you've got a 6.5 by 14 inch oak shell, right? Mass is going to be different, volume is going to be the same, density is going to be different, right? So oak is a lot more dense than maple, and it weighs more. You're going to end up with a higher fundamental pitch, right? Okay. The other thing too about oak and those things is it's like anything. Like from a very simplistic point of view, when you think about the amount of energy that it takes to get something to vibrate or to move, right? It's going to take a little bit more energy to make that oak thing move and project than it is the maple one, just due to the nature of it. So when you see people looking for different materials and stuff like that, like an oak drum, you're going to get a higher fundamental pitch. You're going to get, and it's going to be a louder drum, generally speaking, based on how thick it is, and all of that kinds of stuff. So that's why that's why you see people searching for different types of materials. My particular philosophy is that there's everything. So like when you look at two pieces of maple, right? And you look at how it's spec'd out. I can't remember what the hardness scale is called or any of that sort of stuff. But a piece of maple has a specific density that falls within a range. No two pieces are ever the same. It's like this. And a lot of woods that you see have overlapping characteristics, right? And so I think that like with drums, I think it's a lot better to be pragmatic than it is gimmicky. Birch, maple, walnut, ash, a lot of these same woods that you see guitar makers using, I think should be the same basis for materials that we use in drums, right? They like cherry, or I don't know how to describe it, because they all kind of sound the same within a range.
Right.
They all kind of sound the same within a range. They all kind of sound the same within a range. My goal as an instrument manufacturer is to create an instrument that is consistent, right? So when I first started building some of our stuff, I was experimenting. Like I'd make, let's just say, a solid like wenge, and wenge is an African hardwood. It's very dense. It's very bright sounding. So I'll make a solid wenge shell, right? And I did one, and I built the snare, and it looks beautiful. It sounds okay. It's got kind of this pinging overtone that I didn't find necessarily super pleasing, right? And to be completely honest, we haven't sold the drum yet either. So like nobody else has found it that way either. Okay. So what I learned is okay, let's look at all of the snare drums that have been made. And historically, all of the stuff that people have played, they all kind of fall into a couple categories. And so when I'm building a snare drum, you can come in here and you might see like one of our snare drums. Like I've got some that are where it's like an outer ply of veneer, but then the rest of the drum is maple, right? Because I know how that maple sounds. I know how that maple behaves. And the veneer on the outside is purely aesthetic. So I can look at you with confidence and go, look, I know what this drum does. And I know that when you have the drum and it's been 3 months or 6 months, I know what it's going to sound like. I know how it's going to behave. And I want to be able to sell you something that's consistent so you know how it behaves. And then the aesthetic stuff is just the things that kind of make you fizz with the drum, right? You know, and then that's, in my opinion, that's really the key to it, right? And then the next step is going, okay, being as we've got kind of these 4 or 5 broad categories of materials that we use to make stuff, it's understanding or being able to understand what your goals are as a player, and then delivering you something that is going to be able to facilitate that vision.
Okay.
You know what I'm saying? So you're like, oh man, I need this big fat body snare drum, da 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 da. Like I hear this thing on this track, like, you know, I'm listening to Rat in the 1980s, and they've got these big bombshell snare drums, and that's the tone that I like. Well, then I know that I need to build you a probably an 8x14, 8-ply, 8-lug snare drum. And I know that that drum is going to give you what you want. Right. But then you can come to me and go like, Kelly, I just don't like the way that maple looks. Well, then let's do something different. What do you like? Do you like paint? Do you like veneer? Do you like a wrap?
So you can do whatever the customer is asking for. Well, just one thing, we got to move on a little bit here just quickly. I just want to ask about this oak. Is that solid ply oak? Is every ply oak, or is that a bigger? Yeah, 651 series.
So this one right here is, this one is not solid ply oak. For those of you that are wondering, this is a 5.5 by 14 651 snare drum. We affectionately called it the Chesterfield because this is quarter-sawn English brown oak on the outside of it and the inside of it. So we did those for aesthetic purposes. Okay. And that's why we did that. Yeah, no. So this is a 8-ply shell, inner and outer plies of English brown quarter-sawn oak with a maple core.
So can I ask you this? Let's say, from your experience, let's say I wanted to have a solid oak snare. Is that going to sound good or not?
Yeah.
Just maybe the higher pitch.
It's going to be a higher pitch drum. I say that because I've made them in the past. If you came to me and were like, Kelly, I want a solid aspen drum, I would look at you and I'd be like, yeah, I don't know how that's going to sound, and I would probably try to talk you out of it, because I can't really promise how that thing's going to work. Right. I know how this works. I know how the acrylic works. I know how fiberglass works. I know how carbon fiber works, or a brass, or a steel. But I don't know how weird materials work. And if you're going to come into the shop and you're going to drop between $500 and $800 on a snare drum, I want to make sure that I'm delivering you the absolute best value. Like the highest degree of quality and perfection that I can deliver you, so that when you walk out of here, and again, everybody loves their instrument when they first get it. Everybody does, right? It's 3 months later. You know what I'm saying? Then you've had the drum, and the shiny sparkly has kind of worn off from it, and now you have to live with it, right? That's when it's important to make sure that what you're delivering to the customer falls in line with what it is that you're trying to give for them. I can't do that with weird combinations of stuff. Do they all sound good? Probably. I mean, you can make a lot of things sound good. The other half of the equation is just the very it's the fundamentals of building, right? So if you're building a house, it's plumb, level, straight, square, and flat, right? All of that stuff. Same thing with drums. Square, straight, flat, making sure that everything is built properly and true and things are round. When you do that, right, when you've got those fundamentals, the things that you put on top of it, a shell, and if it's done right, will behave the way that that's supposed to behave. And you can make a good sounding instrument. But again, I look at all of recorded music, right? And throughout all of recorded music, you have a small group of types of snare drums that are being used in recorded music, right? And those are the things that I know to be important. I read this article by Tom Morello, the guitar player from Rage Against the Machine, right? And he was talking about how when he was a young man, and they first started getting big with Rage, and he finally had enough means to go to a luthier and have him build the guitar that he wanted, right? I want this, I want that, I want da-da-da-da, all these things, right? So he gets the guitar with all of this stuff in his head that he thought he was going to be great, and hated it. And hated it. And there were several iterations of builds and several iterations of checks that were written and lots of money spent. And at the end of the article, he goes, I just, in hindsight, really wish that I had listened to the guy who was building my instrument about the things that he knew to be true. I think that that's the same thing with this right here. I don't want to take anybody's ideas away from them. Everybody's ideas, I think, there's some merit in all of that kinds of stuff. Some ideas are just better than others, right? And
there's also the experience and expertise of actually working with the different materials and knowing.
There's there's that too. So I try to push my customers in a direction that I know is going to be predictable and I know is where things are going to work.
Okay.
I think that's important.
Well, in quick succession, I have a few questions. I'm going to nail you. You got to give me to be quick.
Done.
But first, I want to talk about the travel date kit that you build. I want to pop it up here on screen. It's kind of cool. It's a very affordable drum set. Give a quick 2-minute sales pitch.
2-minute sales pitch on the travel dates. Use all the same parts as our flagship stuff, right? So you get the same made in Minnesota shell, you get the same made in Minnesota lugs, right? It's a highly customizable kit, right? So you can get it in all the sizes. You can order a 10-inch, 12-inch, 13-inch tom. You can order a 14-inch. You can order a 16-inch. You can order an 18-inch floor tom. The bass drums, you can get an 18, 20, 22, or 24. The only thing that they're limited to a 10-inch depth, right? But some people don't let that dissuade you because they sound absolutely huge. They're very light and they're extremely affordable. They're $1,000. To go out in this market and pay $1,000 for I want it this color, I want it this size, delivered to me in 5 weeks custom kit, I think is a rarity in this industry. Yep. And when you consider the fact that most of the money that you pay for that drum set is going in to the fabrication, in other words, the parts being used on that, it's an even better value in my opinion. They're super great. Come on in. Sit down and prepare to be astounded. If you're a gigging drummer and you're working on a small stage, you need to get around quick and easy.
That's one right there.
Yeah, well, it's that one back there is a travel date. The kind of the amber colored one. Okay. The gold sparkle one is a full-fledged TC, or that's a full-fledged 651 custom kit. But the travel dates are great. $1,000. Like I said, most of the energy that is spent on those kits goes into the fabrication of those kits. Mm-hmm. So the people walking away from that are walking away with a highly versatile drum kit that's easy to move around. I mean, they don't weigh anything, and they have an absolutely huge sound. They're built so that they can be repaired and maintained. It's a killer deal for $1,000, man. And
you sell a lot of them a month,
dude. We sell probably 4 or 5 of them a month.
Wow.
Which is great. It's just that it just kind of it ticks all the boxes.
It really does. I'm running into that situation now where I have a place where we're rehearsing. I used to keep my drum set there, but the family wants to have their family room back.
Yep.
And me hauling back one of my full size kits is just not.
Yeah.
Doesn't make sense. So maybe I'll maybe I'll become a customer here soon.
You should think about it.
Yeah, definitely. That's the sales pitch.
Yep, you should
Okay.
think about it.
Who were your 5 biggest influences when you were starting drumming?
My first biggest influence, the game changer for me, that aha moment, was Carter Beauford from the Dave Matthews Band. Dave Weckl, right? Terry Bozzio. Did I say Dennis Chambers?
Not yet.
No, Dennis Chambers and Matt Chamberlain are probably my 5 biggest.
They're great choices.
Super awesome choices, man. Carter Beauford, when I saw the first Saturday Night Live performance that they did, where they played Ants Marching, I saw that and I was blown away. I had no idea. I bought the album Under the Table and Dreaming, and this is not an exaggeration. I listened to that album every day, at least once a day, for about 5 years straight.
Wow.
You know, I loved it.
Well, Carter, when he came out, there weren't players playing like him.
No, not
And
really.
he really grabbed my attention too. I think he's a phenomenal player. I love watching him play.
Mhm.
I had Dave Matthews live concert DVDs just to hear the drum sounds and his approach to playing.
Yeah.
Because he's just a phenomenal player. So I agree.
Yep.
Now today, who are 5 players that you're looking at today for inspiration? People you just like to watch today?
People that I just like, Antonio Sanchez.
From
Oh man, and Pat Metheny.
Oh.
He's also the guy that did the improvised drum solo for the movie Birdman. I don't know if you've seen it with Michael Keaton. The dude's unbelievable. Chris Dave, I absolutely love. I don't know if you're hip to him or not. Oh, dude, Chris Dave. Go get hip to Chris Dave. He's super awesome. Dave King, who I happen to build drums for. I think he's absolutely fantastic. Guys like Johnny Vodakovich, and probably Stanton Moore. You know, I've just kind of gotten into that New Orleans slink, you know, kind of that they got going down there. Those dudes are awesome. But I don't think that's a fair question, man. You can't.
Well, it's just a question of top 5 today. Because with me, people have asked me that for years. If you're listening, and I'm like, it changes all the time. Because and then sometimes you go back and look at the players you're interested in years ago for inspiration today. Mm-hmm. So that's why I was asking for like today, right now, the top 5.
Yeah, it'll probably John Fishman. I want to mention John Fishman too, from the band Fish. That guy's wow.
Well, what I was going to ask you is, can you name 5 Minnesota drummers? But you know what? That could get you in a lot of trouble. So I'll stop there.
Oh, man. 5 Minnesota drummers that have had an influence on me. Okay, Royce Rock from God Johnson. Okay. That's pretty easy. Tito Miller, who used to play with John Wayne and the Pain. Super awesome. JT Bates, you really can't miss out on him. I'm going to go with Gordy Knudsen. Right? And then probably lastly, Minnesota drummers, Davu Sero. Do you know Davu at all? Oh. Davu's one of those. So I've seen just about every drummer, man. Like I've seen them all. I've seen, you know, when I saw Davu playing with Dean McGraw at the Black Dog. It was like on a Monday night. In my jaw hit the floor. I had never heard anybody play like that guy. Absolutely amazing. If you get a chance to go see him play, please do so. Please support that guy. All of them. Right. Any of them, really. But man, if you want to have your mind blown, go see Davu play a show.
Well, that's what I got to say about Minnesota drummer. What I'm so excited about this is that I thought I knew a lot of players. There are a lot of amazing players in this town. There's no way I can make a short list of favorite drummers, and that's not me being PC. I've been introduced to players that their approach to drumming is exciting. You're playing. I thought your playing in that video was phenomenal.
Oh,
you
really?
had minimal amount of instruments, and you just really maximized your performance by minimalism. And I loved it, dude. It was fantastic. I want to see more from you. So you know what? We got to cut it now because we're way over. But we'll have you back on, of course.
Yeah.
I want to thank you very much for taking the time to do this.
Yeah, man.
Please check out Twin City Drum Collective. Can you tell them how to call you?
Yeah. So you can come to the store. We're 1618 Central Avenue, Northeast, Suite 148. Come around to the back side of the building. Come in through the door. There's a big sign. You can't miss it. It's pretty hard. Well, I suppose you can miss it, but that's because we're on the back side of the building.
Plenty of parking. I just want to say, plenty of parking.
There is a lot of parking. You can call us at 651-455-4040. You can email me directly at kelly.tcdrumcollective@gmail.com. You can reach in through our website at tcdrumcollective.com. You can reach us through all of that stuff.
Okay.
You can message us on Facebook. You can reach out to us on Instagram. Worst case scenario, none of those things work for you. I am always here. So, camp out.
Except for when you're being robbed.
Except for when I'm right? the one time I'm not here, right? You can come camp out on the back dock, and I'll meet you. I make it a point to I do my very best to service our customers. Condition. Yeah.
Are we back yet? We're half back.
Oh, we're half
What's
back.
this?
Well, anyways, for everybody who can only see half the screen, Paul's over there. I want to thank Paul for giving me this opportunity to talk to you guys all. I want to thank every single one of you guys for hanging out and listening to us. Thank you so much. I want to thank all the customers who come down and have been supportive of the shop and supportive of the work that we do. Thank you so much. None of this stuff would be happening without any of you guys. So I just really want to come from a place of gratitude and be thankful for everything that we have going on right now, including the bad stuff. And I hope to see all you guys soon. Please come down to the shop and play some of our stuff. Please make sure that you engage Paul in the Minnesota drummer stuff. Stay safe, wash your hands, be nice, and we'll talk to you guys soon. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you very much. Take care.
Opening beats provided by Alec Tackman. You too can own this fantastic multi-volume library of live drum loops and samples. Whether you're a drummer looking for new ideas or you know a songwriter looking for a drum loop library, this is the library you're looking for. Support a local musician and drummer. Go to Alec Tackman's website. That is www.alectackman.com. Spelled ALECTACKMANN. Are you looking for a drum instructor that will help you find your own musical voice? Whether you're a beginner, advanced, or in between, the David Stanek School of Drumming offers an experienced and professional approach to help you take control of your drumming. David served on the faculty of McNally Smith College of Music for 27 years. Currently, he serves on the Percussive Art Society Drum Set Committee and is a member of the Modern Drummer, Remo, and Vic Firth education teams. David has authored multiple books including Mastering the Tables of Time. It was voted the #1 education book in the Modern Drummer 2009 Readers Poll. Let David help you find your beat. Please visit www.davidstanekschoolofdrumming.com. David Stanek is spelled DAVIDSTANOCH, schoolofdrumming.com. Again, the David Stanek School of Drumming. You've been listening to Minnesota Drummer. Minnesota Drummer is copyright 2020, all rights reserved. Any content played or viewed during this broadcast is used with permission, is copyright of the respective owners, and is used for promotional purposes only. No part of this broadcast can be edited, reproduced, and cannot be sold. Please look us up and follow us on our various social media sites. You can follow us at minnesotadrummer.com. There you'll find our contact forum where you can give us feedback and recommend a drummer. Thank you for listening.